When a writer says setting, we usually think of a forest, a castle, a small town diner. But setting isn't just physical space.
It's power, it's silence, it's who gets to speak and who doesn't. This episode, we're going to talk about setting as a system of control. We'll explore how movie sets, boardrooms, emotions, and contract negotiations become battlegrounds, and how you can reflect that in your writing. Let's start with this. In the lawsuit, there are several different settings whereby the alleged actions take place. We are going to go from the amended timeline on the lawsuit info as well as the amended complaint. We start with Justin and Blake exchanging text messages. It's very cordial. As first they talk about the family, they talk about their plan and their ideals for the story, and over the course of the filming that become very contentious. We have the silencing, and we have just instead of all these huge gushing paragraphs, we eventually see that things become more concise, more professional, more detached as well. We have the film set where the production actually happened in New Jersey, mostly in New Jersey in phase one. This is a high stake stage, somewhere intimate and public simultaneously. There are intimate scenes taking place on this set. The characters are falling in love on this set. The birth scene, it's also a pressure cooker. This is where the cracks started forming, where there's a wrestling for control, and from one side, it's creative vision to take hold as well. This setting as determines the schedule, the scenes that's going to be filmed. It is the place where creative vision makes the physical performance both literary and symbolically. Due to the high pressure stakes of it, it's also where a lot of the vulnerabilities of this filming is shown. We have conflicts, stress, and subjective interpretations about what occurs. For example, the Jamie Heath and Baldoni showed Blake a scene of Jamie's wife's water birth. It was just a first scene, and she's like, I don't want to see that. So that we have that miscommunication as well. Interpretation is this is highly inappropriate, and their interpretation is there's a lot about the sanctity of motherhood. That's one of the alleged incidences that occurred whereby someone mentioned the sanctity of motherhood, and that was taken in a very off way. This is where things are contested, and it is also a place that is constrained by laws. The Writers Guild, the Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA, and the state law also. So there's a lot of different laws that govern what happens on this set, as well as the contracts the actors, directors, anyone involved in this movie signed or didn't sign. And there's also a conflict with the personal boundaries. There's what Lively alleges and what the Wayfarer parties alleges. And there's also what the set requires of these two forces, which is for them to act in this movie. There are protections, as I talked about, and there's also power hierarchies. Blake is the more famous of the pair, whereas Justin Baldoni is the director, the producer, is the co-owner of this company. But then we have Sony allegedly also coming in on Blake's side, as well as Blake's husband, Ryan. So there is a lot that's happening on the set. We also have the public relations aspect of this. If we're talking about settings, This mostly takes place in a virtual world. This is behind the scenes. This is shaping the perspective of the audience, giving us tiny little sneak peek. As Lively alleges, there was a smear campaign, and as of the recording of this, she alleges it started way early in the filming and is still ongoing. So there is that public relations media aspect of it, whereby whoever controls the narrative controls the power. This is, think of it as a shapeshifter. PR is shapeshifting. It will flow and it will direct the flow of conversations. It can amplify, it can distort, it can smear, it can clarify. It is a fast moving machine. And always keep this in the back of your mind when you're writing. What do you want your readers to feel versus what is your character telling us to feel? Is there an undercurrent? Is there subtext? And this also plays into the conflict between what we're seeing on these lawsuits, what we're seeing with the depositions, versus what the teams from both teams are putting out there for the public to consume. So sometimes what you're hearing PR wise or what you're hearing from the parties in this lawsuit really does not align with the factual evidence that are shared or that we are being given via this lawsuit. And I think about the courtroom. The courtroom, and we, as of the recording of this video, we are in active litigation, but we're not actively defending in the courtroom. But the courtroom is also going to be a very important part later on. It is going to be the arbiter, it is going to be the realm of rules and evidence, and it's going to be where facts really matters. Your subjective opinion does not is not counted. It is simple. Do you have the evidence? If you do, show me. And this is what the law says. Let us interpret that law. So there is less of an emotionality attached to that. It is very emotional and high pressure, but it is still very streamlined in the way it's redirected. It is going to be a slow process. There's going to be tension between the media, what the media wants versus what the court allows to become public as well, and that we will in the future look back on it and that might shift our perception. So we've talked about the setting, the onset itself. We've talked about the courtroom. Now let's talk a little bit more about the virtual aspects. Starting very early on, as I mentioned, Blake and Justin were exchanging text messages. Even Ryan got involved as well, where it was introduced. There's all this back and forth. But when the relationship broke down near the end of phase one and beginning of phase two, as I talked about, the messages became shorter, some on one side, whereby the other side it became a bit longer as well. And we go to phase two. In phase two, the major setting of this lawsuit becomes the penthouse. So the penthouse is, think of it as a character of opulence. This is where the January 4th meeting happens, where allegedly, according to Wayfarer, Ryan yelled at Justin, and according to the Lively team, this is where that 17-point agreement was agreed upon, whereby there was a list of conduct that it's appropriate on set. And this was a very contentious aspect. If you're thinking about sort of plot wise, this would be where that conflict collided. This is nearing the dark of night. But as we've seen with this lawsuit, it really doesn't end. So we'll have to reevaluate that. Aldoni's team believed they were entering into a creative collaboration. Instead, they were repeatedly sabotaged at every stage, and their actions were misconstrued, allegedly. This isn't just about a physical room, it's about atmosphere, about who sets the terms. In this case, lively steam controlled the space, even when that space is virtual. Ask yourself, is your setting just a location, or is it telling the reader something about power, status, or danger? In fiction, we love the concept of the throne room, the war council, or the boss's office. What matters isn't where the scene takes place, but who owns the space and how the environment reflects or suppresses your character's agency. During the January 4th meeting, also, that space that was supposed to be open, whereby Justin goes in filming with his notes and ready to get back into filming, that becomes a trap as well, because the emotions that it takes going in is not the same emotions and perspective that it brings um, out of that meeting. It's become negative, and we've seen that it's been in that penthouse before. That's one other thing to note, how your settings can be strategic arenas and also how they can change. So in the beginning, we see when they're collaborating on the outcome of the scenes of the plotting where they're collaborating. It did go into that space as well, and that's when the famous T Swift moment where she comes in and she's like, oh yeah, allegedly, I keep having to say allegedly. She comes in and she's like, yeah, Blake's my bestie and she's good, our work is good. So it was in that space, and at that time it was a safe space for him to collaborate with her. And we also get this huge mythic figure coming in also and lending us support. And then by January 4th, after that meeting, that penthouse becomes a house of horror essentially, because now it is all that positive feeling is now turned into a negative spelling as well. So think about your setting as strategy. You have to be strategic when thinking about your setting. That penthouse scene could not have happened anywhere else. The reason being that it, as I mentioned before, was a safe space, and now we've leashed all that memory, all that good memory out of it. It would not have the same effect if it had happened somewhere at Sony, like a boardroom. That would not have had that same intimacy turned into betrayal. So we feel that betrayal, because this is supposed to be a safe personal space. Another instance that you can think of is when in Harry Potter, when this Hogwarts is supposed to be a safe space, but during when the ministry takes over and Umbridge takes over, it becomes a very dangerous place. So always think about how you can flip your settings as well, and how you can use your settings to create conflict. This turns the meeting room into a trap, a space where truth is flexible and memory becomes a weapon. Baldoni's side thought the setting meant openness, but that same setting was used to create plausible deniability. Think about your own stories. What setting gives the illusion of safety? But it's actually a trap. Where do your characters speak freely? And where do they watch every word? Writer's tip: use your setting's invisible rules, social expectations, rituals, contracts to build subtext. In settings that it's not physical, that might be virtual or emotional. We are in a world of technology and emails. Writing emails is a huge thing. Meetings, Zoom meetings. There are moments where emails were exchanged, and when you look at the timeline, the first email that we see is between Justin and Colin over, the author of the book. And that sets us up for everything that's going to happen, because there's foreshadowing in that email. She mentioned how she had a previous bad experience about one of her books that was going to get turned into the movie, and she doesn't want that. But she had seen Justin, I believe, in Jane the Virgin, liked him, and she talked with him, she spoke with him, and liked what his ideas, what he was selling. And she said, "Hey, do you also want to be Rao?" So we see that collaboration happen. We see virtual space as a safe space also. As we are having the physical setting, we're also getting that virtual setting. And that virtual setting, the mentions, the text messages also lead into the PR battle, where spaces like Reddit, Twitter, where social media essentially becomes a battleground in itself. And so right now we're surrounded by settings. It is very claustrophobic, I fear. It is very powerful talking about PR company. The setting off stage can be just as powerful as your setting on the stage. Your virtual setting, your cyber setting can be just as powerful, if not more so, than your physical setting. We don't know what happened on the set. We only found out what happened on the set when this lawsuit happened, when litigation started. Otherwise, it was just rumors, and people went with the rumors in late August. So this is such a powerful, powerful, powerful moment. And as I mentioned about the silence, where earlier on when Blake wrote, "How do you like my script?" and he's like, "I think, we might either go with what the original writer wrote or the screenwriter wrote, or merge it," and she goes silent. That is also a powerful way to use setting, because it's virtual. You're not talking to them, you're not in the same space with them. So if they ghost you, you are left in limbo. You literally cannot move forward. You can move backward, but that relationship is hanging by a thread. You can't go anywhere until the other party responds. That is basically a hostage affair right there. You have been taken hostage. Your messages have been left on read. Don't forget that sometimes what is seen is also just as powerful as what is not seen. In fiction, we often forget the power of absence, that what doesn't happen in a setting still builds tension. Writer's tip: use of stage settings, like the place where the character expected to be heard, to build dramatic irony or emotional distance. Letters, emails, digital silence can all become haunting when contrasted with what was promised in a more collaborative setting. Justin Baldoni was eventually excluded from all further developmental and production conversations, despite initiating the project. This is what I call a setting betrayal. The same moment that once offered opportunity becomes hostile. Writers can use this to create reversals. A safe home becomes a battlefield. A sacred temple becomes corrupted. Think of Frodo's Shire, a place he no longer belongs to by the end of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Katniss Arena, a manufactured trap. Or your character's family dinner table, now filled with tension. Writer said, your setting should evolve alongside your character. If their role changes, their space should too, physically, emotionally, symbolically. As June goes on, we see Justin sidelined from the marketing, and it says, in quotes, later Sony attested to the fact that Lively and Maximum Effort were running the show. And Justin's publicist, Abel, was understandably concerned at the optics of the entire cast doing a content shoot without the director and co-lead being present. This would later be something that the public would take notice of as well, and heightened the rumors and negative press that Lively would take issue with. I want you to see how both our virtual and physical settings are now colliding. So we have the events that happened on set now affecting the events that's going to happen during the marketing of this film, as well as later on where the PR machine goes into overdrive, as well as all the social media goes into overdrive, because people love nothing more than to dig and find things out. Just keep that in mind as you're writing. How can you foreshadow? How can you have that cause and effect? We're going to fast forward now to July. July 22nd is when Deadpool and Wolverine arrived in theaters. There were a few members from the film's cast that attended that premiere. And then we have the day after that, July 23rd, Sony informing Wayfarer that Lively demanded that Wayfarer should not attend the New York premiere, and if they attend the New York premiere, she and the cast would not show up to promote the film. So we'll see that premiere also turning against the Wayfarer team. And this is when Justin Sims started compiling like the evidences, trying to just know that some who knows what's gonna happen in the long run. And around this July is when they're looking for the crisis PR, because Justin's PR person does not handle crisis. She's just promotion, and that's when they brought in Nathan. There is a lot on the publicist side. We're not going to get into that. We're just solely focused on Lively v Wayfarer, but without the Stephanie Jones versus Jen Abel aspect of it to a deeper extent. That right there is it's another character plotting series. We're just solely focus on this right now. This lawsuit is honestly just a lot, and it's very, very rich to mine for your own writing. We'll explore more in the plot section. Different settings carry different connotations, different emotions, different powers over our actors. As the story progresses, the setting gets bigger and bigger and bigger. We go from the closed set where production and filming occurs, we go to the penthouse. So we're moving outside of our comfort zone a little bit. We go from the penthouse, we go into this virtual world between Sony, Wayfarer, Lively, where the conversations are happening, where power is changing. We go back, we get smaller a little bit into the production. That is both big because you're editing this huge piece of work, and it requires you to do test screenings, require you to get inputs about music. So it is both small and big. And then we go out into the big wide world during the premiere, where now all these aspects that you've been setting up is now exposed to someone outside of your characters. So now the outside world, your bystanders, your witnesses, everyone now gets a look into what's been going on. We are peeling apart the characters' world and getting a sneak peek into what's going on. And then we go, of course, into the lawsuit where it goes just around the world. So you can make your setting like that. You can create sort of a claustrophobic feeling in the beginning, depending on what you want to do, and then open it into the wide world where now you have this huge anxiety because it's out of your control. Or you can go from a open wide setting where maybe your character has no control, or maybe they love the feeling of freedom, and then streamline it into this claustrophobic, anxiety inducing space. So just see what works with your character. If you're obviously writing a fantasy, I would expect you to take the Lord of the Rings to go from somewhere small like the Shire and then just go all over Middle Earth. That is going from small to big, versus if you're in a horror story, you might go from the big city to your characters move into a small town and everything gets smaller. Or you might do one where it's like a tunnel or a funnel. Think about Twilight. Bella goes from Arizona to Washington. It's bit of a bigger world, and then she comes into this tiny little town, and then our world opens up when she meets the Collins, and it opens up more when she gets into their world. But at the time, our world with the Collins is, and our perspective, our worldview, everything is shifting. Our world also gets smaller because she's not able to interact with our human friends, colleagues, associates, because she has this huge secret to keep. And eventually, when we get to the last book in the series, we breaking down, we see where she basically, it's all the vampires. She barely has any human friends left, and she has to keep, no spoilers, and in case you want to read Twilight. But we do see where she is connected to this sort of connected. She's a very isolated character, even though she's connected, but she was human, and then our world sort of narrows the closer it gets to the end. So just think about how you can use settings to achieve that. And in Forks in Washington, she has all these wide open spaces, but there is a contrast going on with the wide open spaces. She's more in tune with nature versus what's actually going on in her social world. Everything is getting smaller. Takeaway for writers. What does this lawsuit tells us about setting in storytelling? The setting is not neutral. It's always working for or against someone. Control of space equals control of the narrative. Whoever controls the space, whoever sits on the throne, so to say, controls the narrative. The most dangerous settings are the ones that appear safe. Silence, omission, and bureaucracy can turn a setting hostile.
Write a scene where your character thinks they are in a safe, open space, a meeting, a bedroom, a courtroom, but slowly realizes they've lost control of the environment.
Share your scene or your thoughts in the comments below. And I am working on this episode's freebie setting as power worksheet that will be available for download on my Substack. Subscribe to Verse Voyage for weekly episodes turning real life drama into better fiction. Thanks for watching Verse Voyage Masterclass. Today we explored setting not as a backdrop but as a battlefield. Next episode we'll be talking about plot and betrayal arcs so tight they might as well be thrillers. Spoiler, they are. The space you're in tells the truth, even if no one else does.